I am starting to recording.
That's great. I appreciate that introduction. Sounds like it's been a long day.
Yes.
So I am coming to you from San Diego, where have just been speaking, was the opening speaker for the leadership meeting for North America, the LIM. And so been speaking all day. My voice is a little hoarse. I apologize for that.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
So we're going to have fun. This is going to be interactive, and I'm going to expect questions and comments and commitments. You're here to learn, and we're also here to support an incredibly good cause. So are we ready to roll?
Yeah, it seems exciting.
Okay. So the topic that I have today is flexible authenticity. My question to you is, who makes the best leaders? I get that question all the time as a behavioral analyst. I'm asked, is there one style of leadership that is more effective than others at leading? And in all my experience, there is effective leadership to be found in every single style of communication, every single style of leaders. They all have advantages. They have different approaches and different styles. And no one style seems to provide any advantage. And my findings have been supported by over 1,000 studies on this very topic, focused on what makes an ideal leader. There is, however, one thing that all of these studies agree on, and that all of these leaders who are the best leaders have in common, and that is authenticity. Now, one of my most authentic leaders who I know, who was a mentor of mine, was Kelvin Cullimore, who was the CEO of 2 publicly traded companies. And he hired me when I was finishing my master's degree in economics at the University of Utah. Kelvin inspired me, he challenged me to grow and to develop as a leader. And he listened to me as his, and his executive team, and he welcomed and expected feedback. He didn't want people to just agree with him. He encouraged and empowered his team to speak up and bring their talents. He had standards of excellence that were never compromised, but he was flexible in his means and methods. In other words, he could laugh at himself and put others at ease and make, at the same time, make them uncomfortable. He was loved and respected by our team. His leadership helped us to innovate something that many of us today take for granted. I don't know if you've ever been to an IMAX theater, a Hollywood film, or a major production film made anywhere in the world in an IMAX theater. If you have, we innovated that because at the time, 32 years ago, we built our first destination IMAX theater in a place called Branson, Missouri. It's a country music entertainment, kind of like a Nashville, but for older people. And we had to compete with people. Maybe you remember someone by the name of Andy Williams, or the Mandrell sisters, or Lee Greenwood, or Tony Orlando, the Osmonds, Jim Stafford, Glenn Campbell, Roy Clark. These were country music singers. And so we were competing with them with an IMAX theater. We hard to compete, but we successfully really competed with them and influenced the industry to go more entertainment, more mainstream. And so in my experience today, I find few leaders like Kelvin. And I believe that one of the reasons why that is true is that there's this movement, which is called the strengths-based movement. And I believe that it is causing people to ignore their blind spots, the areas of their leadership and communication that need to be developed. And so that's what I want to spend some time talking about, is the strengths-based leadership. Now, there's benefits to looking at the strengths-based approach, but I propose there are also weaknesses. And many of the challenges I see in organizations and in relationships come from the overuse of strengths and the lack of awareness of the impact of our weaknesses. Now, I agree with psychologist Martin Seligman that happiness and success does not come from studying our failures or those are disorders or our negative aspects that we have in our life. He suggests that living a life that is meaningful and fulfilling comes when we overcome challenges. Think about when you have achieved something that was difficult, that sense of accomplishment that you have. When we redefine our attitudes and work on activities that are meaningful and that energize us. Now, I believe happiness comes from utilizing our strengths combined with a strategic focus on our weaknesses. Those blind spots, those blocks to effective leadership and communication. So that means that we get to overcome our challenges and redefine our attitudes around authenticity. So managing your strengths and weaknesses will have a positive impact, which will be meaningful and energizing for you. And it has certainly been that way for me. And Delaria, if you see comments, will you shout them out to me, or questions that I need to, because I love it when you ask questions all along the way. We don't have to wait. Just shout it out if you have a question, a comment, or you disagree with that, which is totally fine. I love that. I recently...
Sorry, I disturb you. Your screen is always open and closed. Is normal?
What is happening?
Yeah, always your presentation is open and closed. Is it same in everyone or just in me? Flashing, right?
Flashing. Well, I am in a hotel and I got the best internet possible. I hope that's not the problem.
Maybe because of the connection, it can be.
Can you hear me okay, Delaria?
Yes, but maybe because of the cable or something.
Yeah, there is. I just got the best service that I have at the hotel that I'm at. Okay. I apologize. So
no
please,
problem.
please forgive
no
me
problem.
for that flashing. So, and if it gets too bad,
we can try. Sorry for this review.
There's no sorry. That's okay. Always interrupt. Okay. So if it flashes, I apologize. Well, I was recently at a conference where a presenter was talking about, and I'll stop sharing for just a second. You see the golf clubs there. That there's a method to that. This was a global conference that I was at in December in Las Vegas, and they said that if you focus on your strengths, that you're going to pull up all of your weaknesses. So think about that for just a moment, because I disagree with that. Think about the game of golf, for example. I don't know if any of you play golf. I don't. I'm a terrible golfer. Maybe I do it once every 2 years. But if you're really good with your driver, that's the big club, and you use that for putting, that's not going to be a very good situation, right? But if I just work on getting better at my driver, I'm not going to necessarily get better as a golfer. I have to be able to work on my weaknesses, my putters or my wedge or my irons. I need to be able to use different clubs in order to be successful at the game of golf, in order to win that game. Now, you may excel at one of those different clubs and struggle with others. So the same is true in our personal life with our behavioral styles. We may be really good at some communication styles and leadership styles, but struggle with others. And I'll explain that as we go. But my question to you is, if you're a golfer, are you any way untrue to who you are if you practice on your weakness, on your weakest clubs? The answer is no. I don't know if any of you remember, there was a skater by the name of Scott Hamilton in the 80s who won 4 gold medals in figure skating. And I had him on my podcast not too long ago. And I'm going to share a picture of what I'm, not him, but just of skating. And he was this gold medalist that was, when he got started, he was continually at the bottom of the junior nationals. He would win like 9th place or 7th place, 9th place again. And so he was really struggling. And until something happened in his personal life, his mother was diagnosed with cancer, and he decided to dedicate himself to his mother. And he showed up with intention and commitment, and he won. And when he was 18, he went on to compete in senior nationals and came in 9th in the United States competition. And that was the last time his mother ever saw him skate. The next year, he took his mother with him, of course, in spirit. Every day he went on the ice, he had his mother in his heart. And he decided to be the best skater he could possibly be. He increased his commitment. And that commitment that changed everything. And he decided that he was going to work on some of the things that were holding him back. He came third in the US and 11th in the world. And 2 years later, he made the Olympic team. And in 1980 Olympics, he came in fifth. The next year, he was second in the world. The next Olympics, he was second in the world. And here's the situation. The person who was number one had strengths that were Scott Hamilton's weaknesses. There is what's called the compulsory figures. You have to do all those figure eights. Scott hated those. And he said they hated me. And he was always terrible at them. So he decided to embrace that weakness. He decided that he was going to love that part of the skating that was typically his weakness. Well, what did he have to do to become number one? Overcome that weakness. And that's exactly what happened. It was part of his job. That's what he needed to do in order to get better. And today, when his kids ask him, what is the greatest strength? Scott says a lack of weakness. So what I want you to do is figure out where you are weak and get strong. He suggests if you keep working on those weaknesses, the stronger you're going to get in all areas. And I know this runs counter to a lot of philosophers out there today in business who say, just work on your strengths. But you do it in a way that I'm going to share with you today that is very strategic, and you will have success. You're going to get stronger in all areas, and you're going to be adding your weaknesses to your strengths column. Now, this seems to contradict everything that you may have been heard, but I agree with so many figures in sports. So when we talk about flexible authenticity, I'm going in and out. I don't know if that's helping, Delaria. Is that helping if I kind of stop sharing my screen every once in a while?
Sorry, I think it's okay. Also, if you don't play it, maybe we can just see the photo also, but it's also okay now.
Okay, so my idea of flexible authenticity is not about working on aptitudes. For example, if you're not good with numbers like a CPA, don't study accounting. That's not what I'm talking about. If you're not good at technology, that's not what I'm asking you to do. Rather, I'm asking you to focus on leadership and communication styles. Now, research by the Hay McBair Consulting Group, they studied 3,871 professionals all around the world in many different disciplines. And what they found was the most successful of all these leaders were able to utilize 6 leadership styles. And I'm going to share those 6 leadership styles. The first one was what they called a coercive leadership style, which demands immediate compliance, right? Do what I say. Now, you have to use that at a limited basis. The second was what's called authoritative. And the authoritative leader rallies team members towards a common vision. Come with me, the authoritative leader says. Affiliative leaders create a bonds and harmony. And that's what you want with the affiliative style of leader. They are creating relationships. They're putting people first. So we've got authoritative who rallies the team members towards a common vision. We have affiliative that gets people excited to work together. Then we have a democratic leader. That's 4, that builds consensus through participation, asking questions like, what is your perspective? And then we have what is called a pace-setting leader who expects excellence and self-direction. Do what I'm doing now. And coaching leaders who help develop people for the future. So they're helping people what they're struggling with. And the best leaders that I have seen, including Kelvin that I talked to you about, my mentor, used all 6 of these styles: coercive, authoritative, pace-setting, democratic, affiliative, and coaching. Now, I want you to think about these different styles as you were to ask your child to clean their room. For example, if you were asking your child in the coercive style, it might sound like this: clean your room or no dessert. If you were to do it in the authoritative style, it would say, we have clean rooms in the Horn household. That's what allows us to sleep. And so you talk about where it is you want to be. If it's a pace setting style, you would say, I can clean rooms all day. And you just have that energy to go and go and go. And sometimes that can burn people out. If it's the affiliative style, you might say, okay, Felix, you're going to help Delaria clean her room. And then Delaria is going to help you clean your room. That's the affiliative style. With a democratic style, you might say, who wants to clean their room today? And with the coaching style, you might say, what help do you need to be more effective in cleaning your room? Now, I want you to think about which of those leadership styles you use the most. Maybe find two of those. Which two of those styles do you use the most? And which two of those styles do you use the least? Do you have someone in your life that can tell you when you're using one style too much? Do you have a coach that can help you in developing these other skills? So as you think of these styles, are there two or three maybe that you feel are your strengths, and there are a couple that you feel that you're not so comfortable with? I want you to think about those. Typically, your leadership style is going to correlate strongly with your personality and communication style. Now, it may feel that adding these additional styles of leadership is not authentic. Now, I invite you to consider your definition of authenticity. Some people believe it means being true to who you are in all circumstances. You must be consistent to those beliefs. Now, I agree that we must be true to our values and our beliefs and flexible in our behavior. And I believe we're at our best when we embrace flexible authenticity. You see, we know authentic leadership is important. There's overwhelming evidence that your sustained success really depends on you being an authentic leader. Now, there are several challenges becoming an authentic leader. The first is for a newly hired manager, a new leader. A situation like this may engage the new leader to just drive to receive extrinsic rewards and recognition. And many professionals early in their career or after a recent promotion are motivated to show their value to an organization and make a name for themselves. And that leaves very little time for self-reflection and self-improvement. It's all about bottom line results. They want to prove that they belong there and that they deserve to be in that seat. And the problem is they can't always maintain this level of commitment. And then when a crisis hits or personal pain happens to them, that's when they start to realize, I need to stop and focus on my authenticity and not just about making a name for myself as a new leader. Now, there's another situation where leaders struggle with being authentic, and that when it comes to self-advocating. I'm going to share with you a story. When I was speaking to a group in Grand Rapids, Michigan, this was in 2019. I was giving a keynote presentation on emotional intelligence. And after I had spoken to the audience, one of the project managers came up to me, and she was originally from, I believe it was from Slovakia. She told me a little bit about her experience. She had 5 direct reports. She was a good project manager. She cared about her team. She protected them. She provided them opportunities to learn and grow. Well, there happened to be an opportunity for her to apply for a promotion. She felt like she was the best candidate for this regional vice president position, which would have been a big step up for her. And she felt that if she got that, she would continue to be able to be that great leader for her team that she was serving now and be able to bring her leadership skills to even more people. Well, she didn't get the promotion. And she said, the person who got the promotion, I feel like, is not as qualified as I am. And she says, I'm curious as to why that happened. And as I was listening to her, I said to her, I believe that you are somebody that cares a great deal about the people you work with, and that you are somebody that seeks to earn positions rather than win them? She said, yes, that is true. She said, I said, you are somebody that when there is opposition or challenges, you might not speak up as much as you like. So you're not comfortable with advocating and saying, I deserve this job, because you would rather just let your work speak for itself. And she says, yes, that is exactly right. And I said, the person who got the job was willing to self-advocate. They were willing to sell themselves. And the manager who was making that hiring decision may have had a similar personality, somebody who would win it. And they want you to speak up, because if you're not willing to advocate for yourself, then who is going to? So in this instance, her need to be authentic, to be that true to that person that she was, and her unwillingness to get uncomfortable and sell herself a little bit, means that the person who is now the regional vice president is not as good as could have been had she been willing to get uncomfortable. Now, that's a tough truth. How often do you maybe miss out on opportunities because you want to behave in a way that you think is in alignment with who you say you are? Her lack of flexibility undermined her stated goal of being that leader. Now, that's one example of where that authenticity, that idea, the failed view of authenticity, gets in our way. Now I'm going to share another one with you. And that is when we receive feedback. So here's another situation that I want to share with you. I want you to consider this manager by the name of John. That's not his real name. He was an operations manager with the children's charity. And he is known as someone who can be trusted to get the job done. And he's very demanding, very meticulous, and he has an incredible work ethic. And he has, as a result, been given more and more responsibility. But very soon, problems started to emerge. Employees started to report that John was abusive in his behavior, and they reported that to HR. And several of his peers began supporting an initiative to get him fired. He is so completely task-oriented that there's little or no positive interaction with him. Everything is transactional. He comes across very strong and is almost like a bully. And he constantly points out what is wrong that people are doing and how they're failing. And when he is intentionally or unintentionally direct, it's not received well. This approach has made him many enemies. At first, John didn't see the problem. He denied it. And he says, I'm just stating the facts, which he considered that direct and fact-based approach superior to all of his, emotional peers who really, how they approached the problem wasn't as good as how he approached the problem. So he attempted to excuse himself initially by arguing that he did not have the opportunity to have positive interactions with his peers. So he did not consider going out of his way to make connections with people in the halls, or going to their office, or recognizing their successes, or going to lunch with them and creating positive interactions, even for just a few minutes. It took an HR investigation and subsequent evidence to convince him how his behavior was putting the company and his career at risk. That leads us to what I call the paradox of authenticity. And that is when being yourself keeps you stuck. As you progress in your career, you will have opportunities to grow and change. And this is going to cause you to feel uncomfortable. Some may feel the temptation to rely on what you know and behave in ways that come natural to you. I was coaching a project manager from Canada a few years ago that was concerned that her behavior at the time was preventing her from becoming an executive with a major company. Her dominance and directness were off-putting to her team, and so she would lose the respect of her peers over time. The only way to achieve success that she desired is to change her approach. to reinvent herself. Now, this is going to be uncomfortable and difficult. Being authentic will require her to see herself as she must become. Her desire is to be effective as a leader, to earn the respect of others and influence them to perform effectively. Those are her goals. Her intentions are what she is being true to. So if you stay true to your intentions, that's where the authenticity can be at the core. But what about being true to who she was before she became a project manager, or even before that? Progression and development is part of the human experience. Think about a CEO that I'm working with right now. He's a perfectionist and controlling, and his natural style are pace-setting and coercive. And he wants his team to do exactly what he does right now. He has lowered engagement with his team. He has high turnover and frustration. And his team has turned to me to get help, to help him get out of his way. If he is unwilling to add to his leadership style the authoritative, which is come with me instead of do it exactly my way, or the affiliative style, which is people are important, or a coaching style, what help do you need to get this task done, to close more deals? Then trust will continue to fall and his team will disintegrate, which is exactly opposite of what he wants. So is his authenticity helping him to achieve his results? I see we have a comment. So do we have anything that I'm missing?
No, nothing.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm. If you have questions or comments, I appreciate that.
I will say you when it is. Yeah.
Oh, you're awesome. So, so the paradox of authenticity is how we view that authenticity. Do we remain who we are? And if so, do we stay who we were when we were 5 years old, 10 years old, a college student, just starting our career? Who is the real authentic you? Here's another challenge to authenticity: the person who always speaks their mind or speaks their truth. Take it as an example, the project manager who wishes the respect of her peers that I was just telling you about. She also wants ways to share what she really thinks. She has many more years of experience than her manager, and she wants the organization to be successful, but her method is that she is going to, how she influences her team is to disclose all her thoughts, all her feelings, and that overwhelms people and can backfire and reduce her ability to achieve her intentions of getting that respect and moving the organization forward. Even though she has many years of experience, she's new to the team, and she has not earned the trust of that team. So an additional challenge to authenticity is to think that we know, and what we know and how we communicate and how we lead will work in every condition, just working on our strengths. If you make every decision just based on your experience, it's going to be difficult to grow past those experiences. It's a good idea to have people on your team that sometimes disagree with you. For a leader, a situation like this can seem like there's a lack of unity. However, if managed effectively, it can help you grow past your current biases. If you have a small problem, it's great to have people on the team that think just like you. But if you have a complex problem, you want people to think differently. And that can create some challenges in struggling through how you're going to solve that problem. But it's going to bring perspectives that you need and that you want. So that's one of the things that it's best to be able to adapt and be flexible. So here's what I'd like to do now. I've been talking an awful lot. I want to know who's interested in learning about your leadership strengths and potential areas for improvement. Would you like to learn what you individually, every single one of you on this call, could do to improve your leadership style? If you are, give me a thumbs up. Yes, I see a hands up. Put a thumbs up. Okay. So here's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to trust me. You're at home, I know, and most of you have your cameras off, which is, thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Katarzyna. I love that. And Nanette, I appreciate that. All right. So if you're here and present, I want you to stand up. I don't care your cameras are off. Just trust me. You need a little bit of room. I'm going to have you stand up, and we're going to do a little human scattergram. Okay, go ahead. You don't have to have your camera on yourself. Just stand up. Now, I want you to pretend as if there's a piece of tape or a line at your toes, all right? Because you're going to either step in front of that line or behind that line. And so you might need some room in your room, wherever you are. I am going to read off several adjectives and give you a choice to step forward or step back, okay? Now, if you don't understand a word, let me know. That could be a problem, because we have people from all over the world. And I'm so pleased that you are speaking English. That makes it easy for me, but maybe hard for some of you. So thank you for your flexibility. Okay, the first, you're going to have to make a choice. And this is going to be hard for some of you because you just got to choose. If you are more persuasive, I want you to take a step forward. If you are more humble, step backwards. So you have to choose. Or if you're persuasive, step forward, or humble, step backwards. You got it? Excellent. If you are more loud, step forward. If you are more soft-spoken, step backwards. If you are more daring, step forward. If you are more prepared, step backwards. If you are impulsive, step forward, or more steady, step backwards. If you are more analytical, step forward, or accurate, step backwards. If you are a risk taker, step forward, or more sensitive, step backwards. If you are results oriented, I want you to step forward. If you are a perfectionist, step backwards. If you're more quick, step forward, or deliberate, step backwards. Some of these are hard to choose between, right?
So hard.
Some of you are going forwards and backwards, and that's okay. If you are more friendly, step forward, or more discreet, step back. If you are more assertive, step forward, or more careful, step back. If you are more controlling, step forward, or more supportive, step back. If you are more motivating, step forward, or more thoughtful, step back. If you're more energetic, step forward, or more reserved, step back. If you're more spontaneous, step forward, or more predictable, step back. Okay, that's it. So how many of you, in the chat, how many of you ended up in front of the line? Put that in the chat, or just if you are behind the line, put that in the chat. So say in front of the line or in back of the line. Front of the line was Nanette. Behind was Ash. And in front, on the line, Ava. So you you're right in the middle, right? That's okay. Maybe you have some flexibility in this area. In front, in back. Now, some of you may have been really far to the front and really far to the back, or like Ava. Did I say you're right? EWA, is that Ava? Or okay. Maybe you were closer to the line. That's okay, because there's an intensity that matters. Now, if you're in front of the line, you're most likely a direct communicator. What's a direct communicator? Turn on the light. If you're behind the line, you might be more of an indirect communicator. So for example, Spencer, would you mind while you're up turning on the light? So it'll be so much more pleasant if we have the light on. That's more indirect, right? If you're in front of the line, you might be more fast-paced, action-oriented, and just a little more assertive and bold. If you are behind the line, you might be more thoughtful, moderate paced, calm, and careful. Does that sound about right for you? Give me a thumbs up if so far we're on track.
Yes, it's good.
Okay, good. So this is completely unscientific, but it's still, there's some theory behind this, which I'm happy to share with you. I don't know if we'll have time, but we're only halfway done. I need you to stand up again. Now, this time you're going to step to the left. Yeah, we got to do one more. Okay. This time you're either going to step to the left or you're going to step to the right. Sounds like a song. To the left, to the left, to the right, to the right. Okay, here we go. So hopefully you're understanding the words. You guys are doing a great job keeping up. If you are more challenging, I want you to step left. If you are more agreeable, I want you to step right. Challenging left, agreeable right. If you are more decisive, step left, or more sociable, step right. If you're more adventuresome, step left. If you're more deliberate, step right. If you're more diplomatic, step left, or more considerate, step right. If you're more competitive, step left. If you're more easygoing, step right. If you're more stubborn, step left, or sweet, step right. Are you more bold? Step left, or charming, step right. Are you more admirable? Step left, or kind, step right. If you're more forceful, step left. If you're more patient, step right. If you're more skeptical, step left. If you're more receptive, step right. If you're more trustworthy, step left. If you're more generous, step right. And one more. If you're more concrete, step left. If you're more compassionate, step right. Okay. Now, how many of you put in the chat were on the left and how many of you were on the right? On the right was Elorm. Nanette tended to go back and forth again. Boy, I will talk about that. Ava, one step to the right. Okay. Caleb, right-winged. Johnson on the right. Leaning left, Kwame. Carlos on the right. Delaria, one step left. Yeah, Hoi, is that Hai Kwang? On the right. Katarzyna, one step to the right. Ash Bodelia, one step to the right. Okay. So we're gonna do something else just to kind of clarify, but hopefully that was a little bit fun. Let me share with you. So in 1928, William Marston wrote a book called How Normal People Behave. And the first thing that he did is he divided the world vertically. So the line in the middle that's up and down, he says, if you're on the left side of that, you probably see the events and people in the world as a challenge and as a problem to be solved. So you see the downside, the risks, the problems. If you're on the right side of that, you probably are somebody that sees the upside. You're more optimistic. You love doing things with and through people. You like to have, really you see the good. One is not more accurate than the other, but if you change how you see the world, then your behavior changes. And then he said the people who are above the horizontal line, if you're above that, then you are more direct, you are more bold, you are more assertive. If you're below, you're more thoughtful, indirect, and calm and relaxed. If you're on the left, you're typically more task-oriented. If you're on the right, you're typically more people-oriented. So here's a little more information. So this is what we call high dominance, extroversion, pace, and conformity. A little different than DISC, but very similar to the theory that people who developed DISC in 1955 copied from Marston in how he never created an assessment, but others used his theory to do that. So here's another way to look at it. Sorry, I went too fast. Questioning, skeptical, logic-focused, challenging on the left. And on the right, you can see that it's more accepting, receptive, people-focused, and agreeable. So now you all have a little bit of all of these quadrants, but typically you're going to end up in one quadrant, above, to the left, or to the right, or behind, to the left, or to the right. Here's one other way to kind of see if you're in the right quadrant. Look at these adjectives and check every adjective that you feel describes you. You can do it on a piece of paper or just do it in your head. You can do it fairly quickly. Again, this is completely unscientific, but it's still helpful. Even if we're 50 to 70% right. How many of you have a check mark in every quadrant? If you do, that's good, because that means you have something in common with everybody. How many of you found that you have one quadrant that has more check marks than the other? Hopefully that is the same quadrant that you ended up in. Is it relating? Is it similar to what we just did? Good.
Yes.
Now, once you know your high trait, that will represent 50 to 70% of your behavior. It's not all of your behavior. You don't need to be 100% accurate, but this will help you to understand a few things about yourself. Now, here's what I want to talk about. Those of you who are high dominant, yes, you are decisive, quick, competitive. Of those leadership styles, typically dominants are really good with coercive and authoritative and pace setting, right? Those are ones that come naturally to someone that has a high dominant style of communication. For the extroverts, you're good at also being, you have the ability to be coercive, but maybe not as much as the dominants, but you're also great at pace setting, be authoritative. You're going to be great at affiliative, and you may be pretty good at the democratic style as well. For the pace patients, you're going to be great at the democratic style, the affiliative style, and the coaching style. For the conformity, you're going to be good at the authoritative, the pace setting, and maybe the coaching style as well. So each of you, depending on those quadrants that you are, most likely have some strengths in those leadership styles. Does that so far feel like what you've been noticing as we've been talking about that? And so, for example, if you're really good at the coercive and the authoritative and the pace setting, maybe you have an opportunity to work on being more democratic or affiliative. Maybe if you're really good at affiliative and democratic, you need to be more coercive from time to time. These are what I'm hoping you start to see is the area that you have to improve. Now, I'm going to give you what is called the backup style based on your high trait. What's the backup style? That is the behavior that shows up when you're stressed, frustrated, angry, or upset. So for those who are high dominant, you turn into what's called a dictatorial steamroller. Now, you may have a goal as a high dominant to win, to achieve, goals and have success. But when you start being too coercive and disregarding people's feelings, that authenticity, if you will, is preventing you from achieving your goals. If you are a high extrovert and you get frustrated and upset or run out of energy, you might launch a verbal attack. And what does that look like? It looks like sarcasm or just over explanations. You just keep talking until people give in. That prevents you from having the success that you want. If you are a high pace or patient on that bottom right quadrant, sometimes what happens when you're under pressure is you avoid conflict or you procrastinate difficult conversations longer than you should. If you're on that lower left or that conformity quadrant and you get in just, again, these are rare circumstances that only happen rarely. You get stubborn and inflexible and have to be right. And that can create problems. So my question to you is, do you see any of these behaviors in yourself from time to time, if you're honest? Could you, and I want to see in the chat, say, those have happened to me before. It's built on disc theory, which is not 100% accurate, but it can help you to at least identify your high trait and like I said, with some degree of accuracy. So I'd like to hear from you. Do you feel like those backup styles show up for you based on your high trait? I see a few head nods. All right, Ava, excellent. Well, I'm going to share with you a case study, a couple case studies. Yes. So Ilorm, yes, avoid conflict. So somewhat right. Kwame, yes, I love to hear that. Thank you for participating. I know you guys must be tired. It's so late. Mel Grzata, yes, a verbal attack. And it's not malicious, but it's just like, I'm going to keep talking until somebody gives in. Delaria must be right. So that's why you're in that lower, even if it's just one step to the left, right? You are in that conformity. You like things done accurately. You're a little bit of a perfectionist. Is that true?
Yes.
Well, that's why you're frustrated. Yeah, sometimes, right? Again, because it's probably a flexible trait. There's a difference in intensity that we haven't taken into account. I'm just talking generally, of course.
Yes, of course.
That's why you're really bothered when my technology wasn't working. I am too, and I'm so sorry.
You're
but
no problem.
it's all perfect. Okay, so you guys having fun?
Yes,
doing good?
everything is good, I think.
Okay, well, let's keep moving. So here's the case study. This is not a disk profile. This is a tool I use called the ProScan, and it is absolutely valid and replicatable and has two-factor. It's oh my gosh, factor analysis that we use to make sure that it's highly accurate. Anyway, so I was working with a CPA out of New York, and let's call him George. He's a senior manager at a major CPA firm that you would all recognize. And he's a perfectionist who likes to be right. And he wants to minimize the mistakes that he receives because he gets negative feedback when he makes mistakes. And he doesn't enjoy that negative feedback. And a lot of the partners at his firm are high D or dominant with the DISC profile. Now, he has low dominance and high conformities. You can see that, right? So dominance is on the left. You can either have high or low, which the DISC doesn't really account for. And on the right, you see his conformity, which is the rules trait. That's his highest trait. And if you look at what is called logic, that's how you make decisions or how you receive inbound information. He's also very fact-based in his logic, which means he's very literal in all his communication. He had 2 friends reach out to him about tax questions, of which he's an expert. But because of his expertise, they reached out to him and he gave answers on the phone that he knew to be right. But just to make sure that he was right, he went and researched and looked up the answers that he gave them to make sure that he wasn't wrong. Well, that took twice as long, right? So not only did he give him the answer, but he went and reviewed to make sure that he gave him the right answer. And because he never wants to tell anybody the wrong thing. Well, this is taking away from his work at work because he was helping a friend. Well, the same thing happens in work. He gives an answer, and then to make sure it's right, he goes and researches it. And he's not trusting his gut or his intuition. That has to do with his fact-based logic. And his backup style, which is that needing to be, must be right, shows up when he gets pressure from his partners. And so they pressure him because he's slow. And when they have an emergency with a client, he never wants to be wrong. And it's a vicious cycle. He doesn't want negative feedback. So he works his hardest to not make a mistake. When he works his hardest not to make a mistake, he takes long and he gets negative feedback. He wants to get more focused on details, and they become more frustrated. And so he ends up being more careful not to make mistakes. And so he spends so much time on the tasks, and it's a snowball effect. And he ends up working longer hours, feels out of balance, and has low confidence because of how he's being treated. When his partners get loud, because they say, "Why does it take you so much time?" Because he's ending up costing the clients more, billing them more. And he feels unprepared to answer them because he just wants to be so perfect. How would you respond to the partners? They complain he's easily distracted helping others. He ends up charging more for every task. This is a situation that is just really causing all kinds of problems. See, our brains cannot multitask. It has to toggle back and forth, and that can lead to mistakes. And boy, you guys, we're running out of time, so I'm gonna jump on. Well, I want you to think about what he could do when a partner comes to him for an emergency. 1, he could drop everything and respond to the emergency. 2, he could get to a stopping point. Or 3, not take care of the emergency. Or 4, communicate expectations to both partners. Make sure he has all his projects listed on a Kanban chart somewhere, right? And so he could say, "Listen, here's what I'm working on, and what projects do you want me to not do while I work on this emergency, so you're not mad at me for falling behind?" Each partner is only focused on what they want. So he's got to manage them in a way that makes his life a little easier, and that he's getting in his own way by being authentic. So expectations are a problem. And so how do you manage those expectations as a project manager? Well, you mention your other priorities and help them to make those choices and help them to understand what's going on. I'm going to ask you guys to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to not see a red bicycle. How many of you saw the red bicycle? I told you not to see it. Okay, you can open your eyes. If you saw the red bicycle, put it in the chat. You see, you may be directly or indirectly self-sabotaging by focusing on the negative. Playing not to lose in sports is you lose by becoming too conservative. I want you to focus on getting positive feedback and think about the successes. Journal every week what you're succeeding at. You know, you have to be able to tell your own story. You have to overcome the momentum of previous judgment. This is what I was telling this George, and focus on your thoughts on getting positive feedback with the partners and reinforce the same things with your team, because every time he was focusing on not getting negative feedback, it's exactly what he got. So I'm going to share with you a couple of success stories. I was working with the CEO. He's originally from Israel. He runs a marketing firm, technology marketing firm in Las Vegas. And his executive team, they were completely dysfunctional. And after working with them for 1 year, productivity increased so much that their revenue increased by 50%. Now, John, the controlling manager that I was telling you about, was able to rebuild trust with his team, and his job was saved. A CPA by the name of Janeth was laid off and was not getting any interest in her resume or being hired. And so she started to doubt herself, and she learned how to adapt her leadership style, which led to a new job and a new promotion. This project manager that I know from Poland, who's a friend of mine, some of you are here, learned how to increase her strengths and maximize her weaknesses. That led to a board position and greater success in working with a Big Four consulting firm. Now, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to share with you a few techniques to work on being more flexibly authentic. How to be flexibly authentic. First of all, become aware of what your weaknesses are. Get feedback. Use assessments. Get a 360 assessment. Understand the cost of not changing that behavior. You can download. I'm going to give you a free disc profile if you want to use that, or if you want a superior assessment, then that's a science-based assessment that's unparalleled for accuracy. There's a cost. It's $50 US. You don't have to do that, but any one of you who buys it, I will donate everything that, except for the cost of the survey, which is $20. I get charged $50, but I'll get 30 of that back, which I will donate to this cause, UNICEF, if you choose to buy the assessment. Okay, but you can do the free one. I'm going to give that to you. So that's number one. Have self-awareness. Step number two, be humble. You got to learn humility. Humility is the valuable, fertile soil of good character. It enables the seeds of personal growth to germinate. Reframe how you feel about your behavioral weaknesses. There's always an opportunity to learn and develop. And pride is avoiding our faults to appear better than we really are. Pride is antithetical to being authentic. Focus on just one weakness. And even if you just get 5% better, just 5% better, you're going to have a huge positive impact on your relationships and on your performance. So find one negative behavior and then find what the opposite of that is. So this is the next step. Once you've identified one behavior. So for example, if you interrupt others when they speak, maybe that's your negative block. The opposite of that is listening patiently before responding. So the behavior that you want is to listen patiently before responding. And so what you will do is every day you're going to ask yourself how you're doing with that behavior. And you're going to ask this question: did I do my best to listen patiently before responding? And you're going to score yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. And once you feel that's no longer a weakness, you're going to move on to the next behavior. Listen, you guys, this is the call to action. It's going to take effort to work on your weaknesses. There's no doubt about it. This is me climbing mountains, and I'll tell you, I love getting to the top of the mountains, but we forget how hard it is. This is me climbing on the top of a 3,500 meter mountain in my home state. There's so many things I could show you about how hard this is to overcome our weaknesses, but only relying on your strengths is not enough to get to the top of the mountain of the success you want to have. I want to tell you one more story. This is my wife and me. This was on January 1st. We went to Los Angeles from our home state of Utah to go see a football game. And on Sunday, my wife and I decided to go to the inner city of Los Angeles to go to church. And we were driving to church. This is New Year's Day this year. And we were in a town to attend what's called the Rose Bowl. And I was reading many of the signs on the street silently. And occasionally I would mention something that caught my attention, only to discover that my wife had also read that, but decided, not to talk about it. On the way home, it happened again. And I blurted out this word on the sign that I saw. It was pupuseria. And some of you who speak Spanish would know what a pupuseria is, which was on the sign. And I said, do you know what that means? And she said, I saw it too, and I was wondering what it is. And she said, you naturally are extroverted, so you read the signs out loud. And I'm the opposite, and I read them to myself. Then she said, you're less extroverted than you used to be. And I think that is because of me, she said. And I am sorry because I've had an influence on you to be less extroverted. And I said, nonsense. You have learned to be more extroverted because of me. And I have learned to shut up from time to time because I love her. Now, we will be married 37 years in June. Our relationship works because we value our relationship over our own personal comfort zones. And people would say, well, be who you are. And be who we are with someone who accepts you and being who you are. Well, some of the things I love most about my wife are the parts of her behavior that are not like me. Do you ever admire a characteristic of someone who behaves very differently from you? Maybe someone is patient and you're not. Maybe someone is bold and you're not. You admire this and wish you had more of that strength. I talk less than maybe natural. I do it because I love my wife. Now, sometimes she is very talkative and shares something that she's passionate about, and I just love listening. Those are rare incidents that never happen in the morning, however, because in the morning, my wife likes to just be quiet. Morning is when I love to talk. However, I avoid unnecessary communication when she first wakes up. Why? Because I love her. If I can do this, you can do this. If you are interested in downloading an assessment and some tools to help you to adjust your behavior to be more flexibly authentic, this QR code is for you. The tools are free. If you can't reach them, I'm going to put in the chat my email address. You can message me and I will send you a link. I've been having a little bit of a problem with this today. We've had hundreds of people apply for this. Stop arguing. What is that, Ava? Doing on my own, right? Sometimes you feel like you are left, but you realize you are heading back right. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed all these great comments. Well, here's my email address. You guys, thank you so much for participating. I hope there's one or two things that were of benefit. Sorry we didn't have more time for questions, but
Thank you very
Ilaria,
much.
turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.